Should I cash in my pension? Now, the media headlines currently fluctuate between the threat of nuclear war with Russia and the fact that Rachel is coming for your pension. Now, I can't really offer much advice when it comes to preparing for war with Russia, but we do have some thoughts when it comes to your pension. So, let's unpack the facts, consider what we know so far, and have a really good think about whether you should cash in that pension quickly or not. I want to focus on things called personal pensions or collective retirement accounts, as they're sometimes called on the Quilter platform that we tend to use, as this is the arena that we work in. Personal pension plans were originally called retirement annuity contracts, and they were launched way back in the 1950s by governments who at the time appreciated that there was a burden where in the future there would be an older population who needed to have saved for themselves. At the time, you had large government bodies and large employers who were offering fairly generous occupational pension plans, but the self-employed had nothing. So they needed to incentivize those people within society to save. Hence, the retirement annuity contract, which gained popularity with its generous tax-free cash allowance, which tried to match those occupational pensions. Then, in 1988, it received a facelift from the Margaret Thatcher government and became transformed into what we know today as the Personal Pension Plan. Now, the Personal Pension Plan offered tax-free cash at retirement to the tune of 25% tax-free cash of your total pension pot, and also the ability to claim up to 40% tax relief on your contributions going in. It evolved with time, and by the late 1990s, there were a plethora of personal pension plan funds that we could choose from for our clients. The rules and incentives around personal pensions were tightened up a bit under Gordon Brown, but ultimately the understanding remained that personal pensions needed to be attractive enough to encourage those people to save for their future retirement, not rely solely on the state. The big no-no from a taxation perspective was the application of inheritance tax, or IHT, to pensions. It was widely accepted by consecutive governments that throwing someone's unspent personal pension into their estate was just not cricket. In last year's Black Hole budget, however, there was a lot of noise around pensions. So, firstly, what changed? Well, Rachel Reeves decided that personal pensions were being used as an inheritance tax wheeze to allow folk to squirrel money away and then not actually spend it on their retirement. How does she arrive at this conclusion? Well, the rules stated that a person dying before age 75 could leave their personal pension to anyone of their choice under an expression of wish, and these funds would then pass to that beneficiary free of inheritance tax and income tax. The rules stated that the funds would be taxed as income to the beneficiary after the person who died was 75. Now, Rachel's decided that from April 2027, you can no longer leave your pension free of IHT before the age of 75 unless it is to a spouse or civil partner. This has devastating consequences for younger savers who might die before retirement and want to leave those funds to their children, especially single parents like widows and widowers. In fact, it creates real unfairness for someone who dies before the age of 55 or 57 from April 2028 because the saver can't even access their own funds to do anything about the situation. The problem could become even worse if you should die after age 75, as the government have not discounted the option to double tax your pension. If you leave it, for instance, to your children and you pass away then after 75, technically it looks as if your pension could be taxed at 40% if the pension plus your estate was over your inheritance tax allowances. But it could then be taxed again further at income tax in the hands of your children if they wanted to access the remaining funds, which of course they will do at some point. Then we come to the new rumours for this upcoming budget of doom. Well, actually, it's the same rumour recycled, and it goes like this. Rachel's going to take away the tax-free cash from your pension. Now, we've been inundated with calls and emails from clients asking us if this is true. The honest answer is that we don't know what she will do. However, we have to consider the impact of such an announcement if she were to make it. So I've got 3 things I've been thinking about which I'll share with you. Firstly, if she did this, it would break the original social contract between the state and the self-employed saver. Many pension savers have built in that 25% tax-free cash to their financial plans to pay off debts, travel, or even help their own children. If the tax-free cash is removed without warning, it will cause carnage for some people's plans. Secondly, such a move would require pension providers to change their systems dramatically. After chatting with some of those providers, this is not likely to be something that they can achieve overnight, we believe. And finally, the removal of the tax-free cash would make pensions a lot less attractive to savers, thus undoing some of their original driver, which was to entice people to save for their own retirement without relying on the state. So, if you're putting me on the spot, I really don't think Rachel will take away the tax-free cash. She might tinker with it or cap it, but I'd be amazed if she took it away altogether. And I'd be even more amazed if she took it away overnight. However, I could be wrong. And this is the point that's leading thousands of pension savers across the country to access their tax-free cash early. They're ripping out their tax-free cash and bundling it into bank accounts, where the interest is then taxed. A lot depends, of course, on where you will place the proceeds and just how much cash we're talking about here. Now, I love the ratchet effect that the 25% tax-free cash has. As your investment pot gets bigger, so it's just simple maths to wait as long as you can before accessing your tax-free cash, because the bigger your pot, the bigger your tax-free amount. Now, in some cases, it does make sense to take your tax-free cash now, especially if it might be just the right time in life to consider some inheritance tax planning, etc. So I'm not saying don't do it, but taking it just because you fear that the rules might change is risky. The personal pension in its current form is a heck of a good investment, even with the changes that Rachel made recently. Throughout the lifetime of the personal pension, it acts in a really tax-efficient way. You can move funds around without triggering capital gains, and there's no tax reporting until you actually want to access your funds. Even upon withdrawal, you can plot out the timing and amounts that you want to take, thus managing your own personal tax burden. And let's not forget that a personal pension can still pass free of inheritance tax and free of income tax to a spouse or civil partner. And that can go as 100% tax, that's 100% cash, if you die before the age of 75. So the 25% tax-free cash is a really important benefit, but it's not the only benefit of a personal pension. For now, we continue to guess. Will she? Won't she? If Rachel does remove the 25% tax-free cash overnight, then many savers will wish they'd taken out their tax-free cash whilst they could. However, if she doesn't remove this benefit, savers who rush to pull out their tax-free cash may really regret their decision. In summary, you could kick yourself for not taking out your tax-free cash before November the 26th. However, you could kick yourself a lot more if you did rush to do it and actually you didn't need the money out and then Rachel doesn't do anything. And there you have it. As unpredictable as a war with Russia and almost as hard to prepare for. Now, if you haven't tuned in yet, our Bethan covered this very topic in more detail in our recent podcast. This episode was entitled Time Travel. It's well worth a listen And you can find out more about our usual podcasts on your usual podcast feed under Your Money Talks with me, Darren Lloyd Thomas, or via our website under podcasts. These are unsettling times. I love the old pop classic, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. We're with you every step of the journey on this financial planning mission. We can't control the rules, but we can control how we respond to them. We'll continue to keep you updated on this, and we're always just a phone call or email away if you need anything in the meantime. Sincerely, my very best wishes.